Hi, hello, welcome to LearnStroke IAS classes by Arjun. You're listening to the daily Hindu news analysis for current affairs news leads with Arjun R Shankar. And today's date is 20th December 2022. And let's move on to the first important news leads of the day. Meanwhile, please do check out our editorial summaries where you can decode editorials also. The COP15 Summit adopts historic biodiversity deal. So this talks about the Kunming Montreal Agreement is aimed at saving the lands, oceans, and species from pollution, degradation, and climate change. So in this, you need to know about a few things. What is the Kunming Montreal Agreement, and what is Living Planet Report, the LPR, and what is the Global Biodiversity Framework? Because after 4 years of fractious talks, nearly 200 countries, including India, approved a historic Paris style deal to protect and reverse dangerous loss to global biodiversity. So, the UN COP15 summit was held in Canada. The Chinese environmental minister, the president of COP15 Biodiversity Summit, declared the coming Montreal Agreement adopted. So this is actually aimed at saving the land, ocean, species from pollution, degradation, and climate change. And it is even said that the wildlife population has seen a devastating 69% drop in the average since 1970. And the Living Planet Report 2022 is according to the World Wildlife Fund, or WWF. And you can see that one of the proposed recommendations. So you can see that highlighting a principle enshrined in climate change negotiation that countries historically responsible for global warming must pay for remedial measures more than developing countries. So the same ought to be applied with respect to the conservation of biodiversity too. So you should know that whenever there is a problem regarding the climate change, obviously you talk about the historic global warming, which is actually created more by the developed countries. So in this regard, you need to know that the developing countries must also be given importance, and they should give the funding, because normally what happens is developed countries create large emissions and the burden also goes to the developing countries. So while historically responsible for global warming, the you can say that the same should be applied to respect of conservation of biodiversity also. And you can also see that uh, the most contentious issue in the negotiation was the financial package to support conservation. The deal says that you need to increase the level of financial resources by 2030, mobilizing at least 200 billion a year. So you should know that whenever you need talk about climate change, everything, you need finances to save this problem. You need to reverse this thing. You need money, and finance is always a great problem. And this time, not even regarding climate change, also biodiversity conservation needs money, and at least $200 billion need to be pumped in. So you can see that one of the 23 targets includes axing environmentally destructive farming subsidies, reducing risk from pesticides, tackling invasive species. So this is all talked in this article, and the deal is being compared by many to the landmark plan to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius under the Paris Agreement. So this is all about this famous article, and you need to know what do you mean by the global biodiversity framework, because the global biodiversity framework is a United Nations led initiative to tackle its root causes and could have a similar impact as the Paris Agreement. So to be finalized in 2022, the global biodiversity framework sets out targets for protecting marine land habitats, reducing pesticides, plastic waste, and increasing investments. So you should know that uh, they also include protecting a minimum of 30% of the world's ocean, land, reducing pesticide use at least two-thirds, eliminating plastic waste, and increasing financial resources dedicated to the biodiversity, at least $200 billion annually for biodiversity conservation. So know about the global biodiversity framework. So this is the important article that it talks about GS paper 3 environment. Moving on to next is Karnataka turns away Maharashtra leaders at Belgavi Bridge. So this is again a problem GS paper 2, the state boundaries, etc. Because Karnataka and Maharashtra are actually disputed between the Belgavi issue, and both of them wants pieces of lands which are on the border areas. So know about the Belgavi issue. 80% of decline in insurgency related violence in Northeast, says Minister. So the information broadcasting minister said that consistent effort by the union government had weakened the ecosystem of terror and had led to pronounced reduction of violence in Jammu and Kashmir. So they say that the violence has come down. So very good strategies have weakened the ecosystem of terror. Insurgency has come down in Jammu Kashmir, and it has also resulted in 80% decline in insurgency related issues in Northeast India also. So not only Jammu Kashmir. So read this article from GS paper 3, internal security. So it has reduced the insurgency in Jammu Kashmir and northeastern parts of India. And the government has also worked on the legal front by strengthening the UAPA, or Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, and has also taken steps at the enforcement level by giving the National Investigation Agency NIA a truly federal structure through amendments to the relevant law. So the NIA, the Unlawful Prevention Act, has all helped us to bring down the insurgency in Jammu Kashmir and northeastern India. And even the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, the AFSPA, which gives the military a big power, used to exist in Jammu Kashmir and a lot of northeastern states. The AFSPA too have been rolled back from large parts of northeast, including the whole of Tripura and Meghalaya. And the article also says that the line of actual control is not demarcated. So graziers in the border village along China have faced problems in the past due to the border not being demarcated properly. Many such issues came up in the past and are surfacing today as well. So this talks about the internal security inputs. So please do read about GS paper 3. And next is 8% annual rise in the notes in circulation. So this brings us an important question for GS paper 3 economy. What is merchant discount rate? Because the article talks about MDR. And Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman said notes in circulation had witnessed an average growth of 7.98%. So you should know that the growth in the currency in circulation, the notes in circulation, NIC, has increased, has seen a 7.98% growth. So you should see that the demand for currency dependent upon several macroeconomic factors, like including economic growth, level of interest rate, etc. So the demand for currency dependent upon several macroeconomic factors, and the quantum of cash or banknotes in the economy dependent on the requirement for. Why do you need a quantum of cash or banknote? To meet certain demand. So what is that? Demand due to the GDP growth, inflation, replacement of soil banknote, growth in non-cash modes of payment. So these are some of the important, and the mission of the government. It also talks about the mission of the union government was to move towards less cash economy, to reduce the generation and circulation of black money and promote the digital economy. So government is ultimately wanting to give a big push to the digital economy, whereby it wants to reduce the generation and circulation of black money. And both the government and RBI has taken measures to promote less cash economy and encourage digital payment. And with regard, you have something called as rationalization of merchant discount rate for debit card transaction. So the RBI had advised banks to ensure that merchants onboarded by them did not pass on MDR charges to customers while accepting payments through debit cards. Very important. So RBI has mandated that the merchants who are onboarded by them do not should not pass on the merchant discount rates charges to customers while accepting payments through debit cards. So this brings us, what do you mean by a merchant discount rate? So a merchant discount rate, alternately referred to as a transaction discount rate, is the sum total of all the charges and taxes that a digital payment entails. So for instance, the MDR includes bank charges, which a bank charges customers and merchants for allowing payments to be made digitally. So MDR includes a bank charge, which a bank charges customers and merchants. So similarly, MDR also includes the processing charge, that a payments aggregator has to pay to online or mobile wallet or indeed to bank for their service. So MDR also includes the processing charges that a payments aggregator has to pay online or mobile wallets or indeed to bank for their service. If customers don't pay and merchants don't pay, some entity has to pay to the MDR cost. So you in total merchant uh, discount rate is the sum total of all the charges and taxes, and includes a bank charge which a bank charges customers and merchants for allowing payments to be made digitally. So you need to know what you mean by the merchant discount rate, GS paper 3 economy. So please have an idea relating this. Next is Lok Sabha passes bill to extend scheduled tribe status to Betta Kuruba, GS paper 2 polity. So Lok Sabha passed the constitutional scheduled tribes order 4th amendment bill 2022 to include Betta Kuruba on the scheduled tribe list of Karnataka. So this is actually support. This is actually an initiative of the government commitment to providing enough time to discuss issues of communities. So GS paper 2 polity and welfare. Yes, moving on. Ban imposed by coastal states on purse seine fishing not justified. Center tells Supreme Court. GS paper 3 law plus GS paper 3 environment plus international relations. Lot of activities that being involved in this. So this brings us another important question. Let me give you a mains question for GS paper 3. What is purse seine fishing? If you do not know, what is purse seine fishing? What are the advantages and how is it endangering the other species? Examine. So this is very important. So you need to know that, and the article also talks about what is purse seine fishing and what is exclusive economic zone or EEZ. Because the center has told the Supreme Court that a ban imposed by certain coastal states on purse seine fishing, which is known to disadvantage endangered species, is not justified. So you should know the mode of fishing. So before we go on, you should know the pure scene. What is purse seines? Because the purse seines fishing are used in the open ocean to target dense schools of single species or the pelagic midwater fish like tuna and mackerel. So they are used in the open ocean to target dense school of single species fish like tuna and mackerel. Vertical net curtain is used to surround the school of fish, the bottom of which is then drawn together to enclose the fish rather than like tightening the cords of a drawstring purse. So you should know a vertical net curtain. You can also see an image which I've shown what is purse seine fishing, and you can see that a vertical net curtain is used to surround the school of fish, at the bottom of which is then drawn together to enclose the fish. And the purse seine fishing in open water is generally considered to be an efficient form of fishing. It has no contact with the seabed and can have low levels, very low levels of bycatch, which means accidental catch of unwanted species. So the purse seines can also be used to catch fish. And One thing is, you can see that the purse seine is a non-selective fishing method that captures everything that surrounds, including protected species. So that is a big disadvantage. So when you deploy it, this even the sea turtles can be captured by a purse seine as it is set and then becomes entangled in the net mesh as it is hauled in. So entangled turtles may sustain injuries to their flippers and shells due to the force. So purse seines can easily encircle marine mammals along the target species as the net is set. So this is something that a big concern actually said by the purse seine fishing. So when you do this purse seine fishing, it has advantages, but also it has got disadvantages as it encloses other number of species which are protected. So this is regarding the purse seine fishing, and the government is actually working. The Fisheries Department of the Union government is actually has recommended the lifting of the ban on purse seine fishing as per a report. So the expert panel recommended purse seiners to fish in territorial waters and the Indian exclusive economic zone subjected to certain conditions. And the also committee also said we need to have a national management plan on purse seine fisheries. So it is actually banned in certain areas, but certain revisions need to be given. That is the important article which says about purse seine fishing. So next is regarding what is the concept of, we have been discussing what is the concept of exclusive economic zone. What is exclusive economic zone? So the exclusive economic zone is a prescribed by the 1982 United Nations Convention on the Law of Sea. It is an area of the sea in which a sovereign state has special rights regarding the exploration and use of marine resources, including energy production from water and wind. So it is in the area of the sea in which a sovereign state has special rights regarding the exploration and use of marine resources for energy production from water and wind. It stretches from the outer limit of the territorial sea, that is 12 nautical miles from the baseline, out to 200 nautical miles from the coast of the state. So stretching from outer limit of the territorial sea from 12 nautical miles from the baseline out to 200 nautical miles. So the exclusive economic zone is also referred to as the maritime continental margin and may include the continental shelf. So this is regarding GS paper uh, 3 environment and economy also. Some portions of that has been also given. And the next is opposition walks out of house over China issue GS paper 2 polity, international relations, etc. Because the government was asking for 500 crores for defense capex for strategic roads. So the P. Chidambaram has asked, has China considered anything on the hot springs in the LAC? Because there is a hot spring called Kiam. The hot spring is locally known as the Kiam. So has China talked anything about the hot springs in the LAC? Have the Chinese agreed to discuss the friction points in Doklam and Depsang? And the Chinese are supposed to be creating more buffer zones. So what do you mean by buffer zone? That is a question that they asked. So what has the China considering the hot springs? So you are creating more buffer zone. What does a buffer zone mean? According to the information, the buffer zone means that there will be no petrol area. And the China has also encroached on Indian land and building bridges, and the issue was of national importance. And the opposition wants the whole issue to be discussed in the parliament. So these are some of the majority issue regarding India China: the strategic roads, defense budget, the hot spring Kiam, and the issues of Doklam, the Depsang, and buffer zones. So GS paper 2 international relations. Jawan stood their ground at Yangtze, says Jay Shankar, GS paper 3 defense. I'm giving you a mains question here. The Anti-Maritime Piracy Bill 2019 will be a game changer to counter piracy on the high seas. Discuss. So the article definitely talks about the Anti-Maritime Piracy Bill will be a game changer to counter piracy on the high seas. So what is Anti-Maritime Piracy Bill of 2019? And what is the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea UNCLOS? It discuss. So the article clearly said that um, the foreign minister, external affairs minister said that we should not directly or indirectly criticize our Jawans. Our soldiers are standing in Yangtze at 13,000 feet defending our borders. So while passing, it also talks about while passing the anti-piracy bill, there was a big section that everybody opposed because there was a clause on death penalty which opposition MPs had sought to be reconsidered and had been amended to punishment with death or with imprisonment for life. The anti-maritime piracy bill passed by Lok Sabha will bring the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea UNCLOS into domestic law and enable Indian authorities to take action against piracy on the high sea. So the maritime piracy bill will be definitely bringing the UNCLOS into domestic law, which will enable authorities to take action against the piracy. So even the MPs have asked the government to reconsider the clause for mandatory death penalty and replace it with probably say life imprisonment. And you need to know what you mean by maritime policy. The bill is actually aiming the UNCLOS into domestic law. So India currently do not have a legislation on matters of piracy on the high seas. So once enacted, the anti-maritime piracy bill will bring into the law the UNCLOS, which India ratified in 1995. So previously, pirates were prosecuted under the Indian Penal Code 1860. So under provisions dealing with armed robbery and admiralty jurisdiction of specific court, etc. So India's sovereignty is delimited by outer boundary of its territorial waters, 12 nautical miles from the coast. The acts of piracy committed by a foreigner outside India's territorial waters cannot be an offense under the IPC. And those accused in piracy cases have been acquitted due to lack of jurisdiction. So this is a big thing that can actually work and help it because India will now have the UNCLOS in the domestic law. So that will be helping India to manage counter piracy on the high seas. and there would not be a problem of jurisdiction. Say you are 12 nautical miles from the coast and you are out of the India's territorial waters. And what do you mean by the UNCLOS? What do you mean by the United Nations Convention Law of the Sea? So this is the UNCLOS is a set of rules to govern the ocean and the use of their resources. It is based on the idea that all problems related to oceans are interrelated and need to be addressed by global community. After over 14 years of collaborative effort by more than 150 countries of the world, the convention was opened for signature in December 10, 1982 in Montego Bay in Jamaica. So the UNCLOS in 82. So UNCLOS governs all aspects of ocean space, including the delimitation, environmental control, and you can see the maritime, and they also have the maritime issue, and marine research, economic and commercial activities, transfer of technology, and ocean disputes, etc. So this is regarding the article regarding this. So moving on to the next important article is Supreme Court clears 6,844 cases since Chandrachud took over as the Chief Justice of India. So recently, the Hindu newspaper has been talking about the various types of high Supreme Courts and the number of pendency in the cases. That means large number of cases are actually pending in the courts. So the recent when Chandrachud took as the Chief Justice of India, Supreme Court has cleared around 6,800 plus cases. So that is definitely an achievement. GS paper 2, law and governance. So this is actually a good thing. And still there are thousands of cases pending, and every day we see articles how to solve this problem. Next is poor in Rajasthan to get 12 LPG cylinders a year at 500 each. So this is again very important regarding GS paper 2 welfare. So we need to know what is Ujjwala Yojana. This article talks about what is Ujjwala Yojana because the state government would conduct a study of families in the BPL who are converted under the Ujjwala Yojana launched in 2016. So this brings us, what do you mean by the Ujjwala Yojana? The Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana aims to safeguard the health of women and children by providing them with clean cooking fuel or LPG so that they do not have to compromise their health in smoky kitchens or wander in unsafe areas collecting firewood. So this was launched in 2016 in Uttar Pradesh, and under the scheme 5 crore LPG connections will be provided to BPL families with over 1,600 per connection in the next 3 years. So this is a great thing. So know about the Ujjwala Yojana. Next is regarding Finland pitches for Indian nurses, tech workers amid labor crunch. So facing a massive skill labor shortage, Finland is a very popular country which has got very high indicators, very high development. So they are actually facing a massive skilled labor shortage. And the Finland's government is planning to double the number of work immigrants entering the country and triple international student placements by 2030. So Finland signed a joint declaration of intent on migration and mobility, and is hoping to attract workers in the technology and information communication sectors. So India has such a pool of professional talent that we need in Finland. So we need more workforce, more talent, more professional skilled people is what Finland is saying, GS paper 2, international relations. And the Russian kamikaze drone hits Ukraine as President Putin arrives in Belarus. So you should know what do you mean by kamikaze. Moscow launched a kamikaze drone. So kamikaze drones are cheaply produced disposable unmanned aircraft that fly towards their target before plummeting at velocity and detonating on impact. So this is what is called as the kamikaze drone. So please do know about what do you mean by the kamikaze drone. Yes, paper 2, international relations. The next is UK judges rule Rwanda deportation plan lawful. So recently you should know the UK and Rwanda plan because the judges in London ruled that the UK government's controversial plan to deport migrants to Rwanda. They say it is lawful after a legal challenge came by migrants and campaigners. So they say it's very legal to deport migrants back to Rwanda. The former Prime Minister Boris Johnson brought in the proposal to try to tackle record number of migrants crossing the English Channel from northern France by small boats. So a lot of people crossed the English Channel from the northern France, and it triggered a wave of protest from right groups and charities. And the court has concluded that it is lawful for the government to make arrangements for relocating asylum seekers to Rwanda and for their asylum claims to be determined in Rwanda rather than in the UK. So they wanted even the quota said that the government let the government relocate the asylum seekers to Rwanda. So the relocation of seekers in Rwanda is consistent with the UN Refugee Convention. That is also very important, and with the statutory and other legal obligation on the government, including the obligation imposed by the Human Rights Act of 1998. So UK government says that it is actually in tandem. They are keeping in the UN Refugee Convention and also the Human Rights Act of 1998. And next important one is regarding the last article regarding one is the Chinese business confidence is lowest in almost a decade. So what is this business confidence? So that is very important. This question is, what is business confidence? Because China's business confidence hits its lowest level since at least January 2013. A survey by the World Economics showed it's reflecting the impact of surging COVID-19 cases on economic activity. So various COVID-related issues has brought down the business confidence. You should know that the index fell to 48.1% in December from 51.8 in November. So the index was the lowest. The business confidence hits the lowest level. So what do you mean by the business confidence? So in any economy, confidence levels influence and provide information on social and financial development. So the business confidence index can be used to check growth and anticipate curves in economic activity. So that is a very good index to check the growth. Around the world, the numbers above 100 suggest optimism in near business performance, whereas number below 100 shows pessimism. So a number above 100 shows optimism. In India, business expectation index. In India, it is the business expectation index. It is calculated as weighted net response of 9 business indicators. And they are actually having. So here are some of the various indicators which say that consumers and business confidence can be affected. When you have changes in interest rate and exchange rates, movements in employment levels and business investment, shift in the prices of goods and services such as petrol, healthcare, education, external economic or financial shock like the financial crisis, policy shift in the stance of government fiscal policy, including spending cuts, taxation rates, etc. So all these can affect the business confidence in the consumers and business confidence in the market. So this is actually know about what you mean by the business confidence, etc., and know what you mean by this, and what are some of the various aspect or indicators that can really impact the business confidence. So GS paper 3 economy perspective. So these were some of the important news leads of the day. So keep listening to LearnStroke IAS classes by Arjun and subscribe our YouTube channel and do watch more videos and learn.